Woke up this morning, be round for my shoes. About got these walking blues. I woke up this morning, I be around for my shoes. Well, you know about got these old walking blues. Lord, I feel like blowing mine. Oh, lonesome home. Got up this morning, my little Bernice was gone. Woke up this land, blow my lonesome home. Well, I got up this morning, all I had was gone. Leave this morning if I had to go round the blind. I've been mistreated now, don't mind dying this morning. If I had to go round the blind, babe, I've been mistreated. Babe, I don't mind dying. Some people tell me that the old word blues ain't bad. Worst old feeling I most ever had. Some people tell me the old word blues ain't bad. Well, it's the worst old feeling I most ever had. She got get moving from her head down to her toes, breaking on the dollar most where she goes. From her head down to her toes. Well, she breaking on a dollar most anywhere she goes.
Hey everyone, James Kerr here, and today we're going to be working on Walkin Blues, Robert Johnson's version. So this tune, we really see the influence of Son House in Robert's playing. And before we get to the lesson here in a minute, just a couple things to talk about the what we're going to be focusing on here, and a couple of the key points about this tune I think to be aware of. So yeah, the influence of Son House is probably most strongly felt on this record of all of Robert's recordings, on this one of Walkin Blues. So the song was actually originally written by Son House and recorded in 1930, and definitely some of the lyrics and some of the structure of the tune is taken from Son House's version, and also there's a lot of Son House's My Black Mama is in there as well. So Robert's version of Walkin Blues, we can hear kind of the combination of both those songs. Son House's Walkin Blues and My Black Mama are in there, and very strongly felt. So Son House, of course, another one of the giants of Delta blues, and one of Robert's personal kind of mentors and heroes from that region. So we hear Son House very strongly in this Robert's version of Walkin Blues. This, I believe, Walkin Blues is a good entry point into getting into this Delta blues bottleneck style. It's fairly straightforward in terms of the structure and the repetition of the riffs, so it doesn't have the degree of complexity as Crossroad Blues, some of the subtle variations and variations of the finger-picking patterns that he does on Crossroad Blues. So if you haven't checked out the lesson I did on Crossroad Blues here on my channel, check that out as well. But this song's Walkin Blues is a little simpler, I would say, to play. Not as much intricacy in the differences between the verses, and it's a bit more straightforward. So this is a great starting place for getting into the style of playing some Robert and playing some bottleneck in this Delta blues style. So the tuning, very important. I talked a lot about in that last video. I won't go into quite as much detail, but on this song Walkin Blues, Robert's version, he's in basically a G bottleneck tuning. I feel this is how he did it, and but he's tuned closer to A flat, so it's higher than your G tuning. Intervallically, it's the exact same as your G tuning. So if I was in a G, that would be low D, 6th string, G on the 5th, D on the 4th, G on the 3rd, B on the 2nd, and D on the 1st. Except he's tuned higher. It's closer to A flat. So it's not in tune with our tuners A equals 440 hertz. So that's a misconception to think that it's out of tune if it's not with our modern conception of A equals 440. So much of the greatest music throughout history was not a consideration, being in tune with A equals 440 hertz, which is the modern pitch standard. So he's certainly in tune with himself. Factors such as finding the key that's best suits the singer's voice, that feels nice on that particular guitar. So many factors, but he's not in tune with our A440. But that does not mean it's out of tune or primitive or something. That's Johann Sebastian Bach wouldn't have been in tune with our A equals 440 hertz either. So it's all relative throughout history. The A was not a fixed, there was no fixed pitch A equals only one specific A equals 440 hertz, right? So we can just throw that out the window. So my feeling is he tuned closer to A flat. It sounds like this. And then capoed the 3rd fret for this song and Crossroad Blues and Come On In My Kitchen. So some of his most iconic bottleneck songs are in this exact tuning and key. So I do not believe the recording was sped up. It lays very nicely and comfortably if we're in this tuning A flat, and then we capo the 3rd fret. And everything fits very comfortably with the slide. So I do not believe the recordings were sped up, as some theorized about 10 years ago that was a popular argument that Robert's recordings were sped up. I do not believe that was the case, right? Most compelling of the evidence against that is that none of Robert's contemporaries ever mentioned anything about his recording sounding sped up, or his family members who heard him play all the time never said anything about his recording sounding unusually unlike him or sped up. And it lies very comfortably on the guitar if you're tuned to A flat. So do not believe they were sped up. I believe the magic is in Robert's playing and singing. Nothing unplayable or unsingable about doing it in this key and at this tempo, like you heard me attempt it right there at the beginning of this video in the original key. And so this is what it would sound like in this key. I'll give you some specific tuning notes once we capo the 3rd fret. But think closer to A flat. One of the other most compelling piece of evidence in favor of that is Willie Brown's recording of Future Blues, which is in this exact same tuning. If you listen to Future Blues by Willie Brown, the song is in this open, closer to A flat tuning. And Willie Brown was, of course, another mentor and hero and friend to Robert Johnson. That's how I believe he did it. Robert Johnson tuned closer to A flat. He used several tunings on his recordings. He also used a D or an E tuning on some other bottleneck things like Preachin' Blues, and then of course played in standard tuning as well on some things. But on some of his most classic bottleneck tunes, he uses this G tuning, but then closer to A flat, and then capo the 3rd fret. All right, so that's if we want to play along and match his playing on the recording, which I think we can learn so much by studying the master and his original recording. All right, so we're going to jump in here. If you want to go into further detail on this song or any of these others, get in touch for Zoom lessons. You can find my website and link in the description below, or leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this as well, any ideas or thoughts you have on this song and playing in this key and in this tuning or in this style. So enjoy the lesson. I think there's a lot here to absorb, and if you do find this useful and you get something out of this free lesson here, please do subscribe to my channel here. There'll be lots more blues lessons and content and performance videos here on my channel. So subscribe and enjoy the lesson, and I'll see you next time.
Okay, so let me give you some tuning notes here in this tuning with the capo on the 3rd fret. So we're in, as I mentioned, a G tuning, but think of it as a G tuning intervallically but higher, so closer to A flat as discussed, and then the capo is on the 3rd fret. So then these would be your tuning notes here, high to low. 1st string, 2nd string, 3rd string, 4th string, 5th string, and the 6th string. So that's our open tuning there. So use your ears, right? You can throw the tuner out the window for this, right? Tuning to Robert when he's in this tuning for some of his bottleneck tunes. So use your ears, tune to the recording, but those are reference notes once you have the capo on. So I'm in the G tuning, but closer to A flat. Then I've got the capo on the 3rd fret, and this is my chord. So it's closer to concert B, B natural, but a little lower than B natural with our tuners, right? So that's where he's at, I believe, for this tune. So get yourself in tune first off. And then let's jump into this intro here. So if we slow it down, Robert's version is about 95 beats per minute if we're playing along with the metronome. So let's slow it down for now to 60 beats per minute like this, and then look at this intro. But before we get to that, I'm not going to break down. I'm going to assume that you have some familiarity with the slide at this point. If you're jumping into this video, stay tuned for a separate beginner slide video that I'll be posting on my channel here. But just to go over a couple of the key basics of slide, you always want to be over the fret that you're playing intonation-wise, not in the middle like you would be with your fingering. When you're playing with a slide, you've got to be over the fret itself. So if I'm playing 15, like I will be on the intro here, I need to be actually over the 15th fret, not in the middle. That's going to sound flat, right? So you got to be basically the center of your slide. Your target is over the fret itself, the actual metal fret. That's where you want to be over with the slide in order to be in tune. So that's very, very important for your intonation with the slide. And then you don't press down, of course, like you're used to playing with your fingers. If you're new to slide, you don't press down, you hover over the... So I'm not pressing downward like I would if I'm fretting a note with my fingers, all right? So you're floating over the strings. No pressing down. And the planting with the right hand, what I call planting or blocking, it's often referred to as well with the right hand. So that's basically keeping your right hand on the strings that you're playing. So my thumb, index, and middle, these 3 fingers, what I'll be using for this technique, thumb, index, middle. And they're basically planted on strings always when they're not being played. So that's what I call planting with the right hand. And that goes hand in hand with muting. So you want to be basically put the finger back on the string when you don't want it sounding to mute it. So muting is a huge part of slide playing, so you don't get all the unwanted rattling and buzzing sounds and strings ringing that you don't want ringing. So we do that by muting with both hands, actually, but with the right hand, that blocking is very important. So setting up over the strings for this intro, I'm going to be on middle on the first string, my right hand middle finger. My right hand index finger is going to be on the second string, and then my thumb on the third string. And then my thumb is kind of the free ranger that can go anywhere from 6th, 5th, 4th to 3rd, and sometimes even up to the second string as well. But index and middle, so that right hand planting is very important for the style. And then the muting, these fingers behind the bar, I'm a believer as well, and keeping those down behind your slide. If I say bar sometimes because I'm also a dobro player, but here we're using bottleneck, of course, so the fingers behind the slide. So lightly, again, not pressing down firmly into the fingerboard, but just hovering over those strings behind the bar to get rid of some of that unwanted, string ringing behind the bar as well. So I like to keep with my slide on the third finger. Again, ring finger is what I use. I know that we know that's what Sunhouse used because we've got some video footage of him quite a bit, and he used it on the third. So it's quite likely Robert did as well. But if you're using it on the pinky, that's totally fine as well. But either way, keep these, if I'm using it on the ring finger, first and my index and middle finger on the left hand are down behind the bar, right? Muting, lightly touching the strings always, wherever I go. All right, but like I say, stay tuned for a beginner slide guitar bottleneck style blues video that'll be up on my channel soon. But for this video, I would assume that you have some familiarity with slide to be jumping in here. Although not necessarily. As I mentioned, this is a good place to start with Robert's style, so I'd say this lesson would be suitable for beginners as well, as long as we slow down the tempo like we're going to be doing here. All right, so if we bring down the tempo to about 60, as I mentioned, Robert's recording is about 95 beats per minute. I'm a big believer in practicing with the metronome. Timing, such a huge, important part of the style. Robert's timing, his rhythm was unbelievable. So we should work with the metronome, right, to work on dialing in the rhythms of the different parts of the tune. So this intro, once we're capoed in this tuning, this intro is going to be on 15 here. So I've got a dot there on 15. If you have a 14 fret guitar, that's ideal for this style. Makes it easier to reach up there, but it should be quite comfortable to reach, as I mentioned, in this tuning, all right, on 15th, especially if you got a 14 fret guitar. All right, so this intro starts with these triplets, sliding up to 15 on the first and second string. So I'm picking both the first and the second string together. Is what that sounds like with just the right hand. So it's right on the downbeat. You're coming in 3, 4, triple it, triple it, triple it. And sliding up to each one. Just practice that until you get a good sound with that. My thumb is on, either the third or the fourth for this part. I would say the third. And then continuing on, also in the 15th fret on the third string, and then the 15th fret on the fourth string. So the whole thing would sound like. That is second string 15, and then third string 15, all in the same fret. You're just playing a major chord in this key. So that whole first part of the intro at this tempo, 3, 4. Again, 3. So I start right on the downbeat. That's very important. Now, if you've seen the Crossroads bit lesson I did, he starts that one on the upbeat. So that one's a little trickier. I think this tune in general is easier to wrap ourselves around at first, particularly if you're new to the style. This one's a little more straightforward, right on the downbeat. Triple it, triple it, triple it, da 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 da. Is the timing there? 3, 4. And then it goes right into this descending. Typical walk down he does with the octaves here. So that's on the 3rd fret. So if I've got my capo here, I'm going to be calling this the 3rd fret, even though with the capo it's actually the 6th fret, but I think it's easier. The capo is just essentially our nut here. Think of this as our nut, so when I say 3, that's going to be our 3rd fret with the capo. All right, so I'm not a believer in writing this stuff out in tab for my blues students and my blues lessons, mainly because you're going to get a lot more out of it using your ears and the video. I believe in this particular style, I do use tab in some of my bluegrass instruction. There's a lot more notes and the tempos might be very fast. So I do write out some of those lessons using tablature for bluegrass dobro. But in this blues style, you really use your ears. The most important ingredients, the rhythm and the feeling. The tab is just not going to help you, right? So you make use of the video rewind, the combination of using your ears and watching my hands is how you want to learn this, right? It's an oral tradition, so just getting the numbers off the tab is not going to help you in long-term learning the style, I don't believe. So with my blues students and in this slide Delta blues students, I tend to not use tab generally. But when I say 3, that would in our case would be 3 with the capo. So this is like the nut, O. O is our capo. So that's walk down is 3 on the 4th string, which is the 7th of that one chord, and then an octave there on the 6th string, same fret, 3. So that should be an octave, 3 on the 6th string, 3 on the 4th string, and then I'm alternating that with an open 3rd string, and then you just descend chromatically 1/2 step lower each time. So this is 3 0 and then 2 0 1 0. So that is, and then on the end of it, he uses the slide on this, 3 on the 5th string, and then open 4th string. Sliding up to the 3 on the 5th string. So that sounds like. If we do that even half slower. So I'm doing the 3rd string with my right hand middle finger, and thumb is on the 6th string, index is on the 4th string. So get the feel for that. It's a very common walk down. He does the same one really on the intro of Crossroads as well. And then instead of going down to that low 5, he does that on the 4th string. That's the whole intro. Let's try it in time here at 60. It sounds like this. 3, 4. One more time. 3, 4. Triple it, triple it, triple we're into the verse. So let's look at the verse now, what he's doing here. Pretty simple, this basic pattern that he does here under the first part of the verse each time. It's just open this power chord there, 5th and 4th strings together with a thumb. And I would urge you to use a thumb pick when you're doing this tune. And in general for this style, you get a little more volume and clarity with the thumb pick. We know from one of the photographs of Robert that he had a thumb pick on. So if you haven't used a thumb pick yet in your slide playing or acoustic slide playing, I would urge you to make the jump, and in your finger picking blues as well. If you're playing acoustic, get used to using the thumb pick. I believe Robert used one, and you'll get a little bit more volume and attack on this verse part that he does. So you're just doing quarter notes. Should be right with the metronome on the 5th and the 4th string, with this the slide up to the 3rd fret on the 6th string. And 1. So the slide is on the and 1. And 1. So the slide is just getting that slide up to the 3rd fret on the 6th string. It's a little hard to tell if he's doing that with the finger or the slide. I like to do it with the slide. That would be with the finger. It can be a subtle thing under some of the verses. Sometimes it's more prominent than other times. But I've been doing it with the slide. I think he's doing it with the slide. So that's the basic riff there. Pretty easy there. So you're just playing open, really 5th and 4th string. Right on the beat, right on the quarter notes with the and. And 1, 2. I woke up this morning, feel round for my shoes, about got these Walkin Blues. And then when we go to the 4 chord, he goes up to 5 there, which would be our 4 chord with a straight slide, right? So with we're actually on the 8th fret, but with I'm calling this 5 because again the slide, the capo is O. Just picture that as the nut. So that's going up to, in any open G tuning, that's where your 4 chord is. In measure 5 of the blues, that's where we are in measure 5 here. And on this one, it's a pretty simple and 1 pattern that he does here. And 1 with the thumb, all with the thumb here. So it's and 1 and 1, and then back to here. Well, you know about it. And then up to 7. So interestingly, where the 5 chord normally is in the 12-bar blues progression on measure 9, he goes back to that 4 chord in this version, and then up to the 5 chord, and then right back. This is all really on the 5th string with my thumb. And you can sometimes get a little bit of those other strings ringing in there with that chord. It's all that same rhythm. And 1, and 1, So let's try that whole verse now at this tempo. 2. I woke up this morning, feel round for my shoes. About got these walking blues. Woke up this morning, I feel round all for my shoes. So the part we skipped here is the hardest part actually in between those. So this starts the same, except now the 3 is on the 5th string. And then he's sliding into the root on the 1st string, which is 5 on the 1st string. And so that's a little syncopated thing. This is probably the trickiest part of the verse to get rhythmically. So it goes and 1, and then this slide up to 5 is on the upbeat as well. So it's so your thumb is basically staying on those quarter notes, pulse chunking on the quarter note, and then we got our syncopated upbeats on the slide up here, and then on the slide up on the 1st string. So try that with the click here, and that's and that slide up on the 1st string, I'm doing the middle finger. Again on the 1st string, middle. Just do that. It'll take a little practice to get this part, the syncopation. It's tricky at first, especially if you're trying to sing along. I found the hardest part about this tune is singing it and playing at the same time. I can do the guitar part by itself fairly easily, but the singing and playing with the syncopation and the upbeats and the slick rhythmic stuff that he does is the real challenge. But just do the first 3 notes, and there will be and 1 and rhythmically, and 1 and just do that. So that's again up to the 3rd fret on the 5th string, which is our just a little anticipating on the upbeat, just like we did on the verse, except now it's on the 5th string. And then you're throwing that nice slide up on the 1st string. And that's very easy to get. Some of the ones I missed, I think, there in the video where I got a buzzing one. So depending on how low your action, the action's gotten a little too low on this guitar for my taste for this style. If your action's a little high, of course, for this bottleneck style, that's good. All right, so you get less buzzy notes with a higher action. But to get a nice clear 1st string ringing note there is the goal. And a little vibrato on that one as well. So your vibrato with the slide is going to take some practice if you're not familiar, just a gentle rocking back and forth, left to right. So you're just rocking back and forth gradually like this, just like the vibrato you would use with your finger, which is more of an up-down vibrato, and like that. With the slide, it's more left-right, closer to what a classical vibrato would be with a violin or a cello, just rocking left-right. There's not a lot of vibrato in this tune, actually, but on that 1st string note, I'm hearing a little bit. So. And then when he goes to where the 5 chord would be, as I mentioned, he goes back to that 4 chord instead. And then up to the 5 chord, same rhythm, back to the 4 chord. And then this again for the last measure. So let's try that whole verse together. 3, 4. Feel round for my shoes. About got these walking blues. Woke up this morning, I feel round up on my shoes. Well, you know about up to the 5. Got these old walking blues. So he does that again at the end of each verse, actually, as well. Exact same thing. And then what we didn't add is just getting the thumb quarter notes after you go up to the first string. So it's 4 and just getting that steady quarter note with the syncopated notes is what it'll take some practice. So just that one measure is the hardest spot. So that's the whole first verse, which is essentially what he plays. Nice thing about this tune, as in terms of it's a little easier, that, as I mentioned, than Crossroads for getting into this style. There's not so many intricate variations that he does. He pretty much sticks to that same way on each of the verses. Pretty much plays it exactly the same, except for the third verse, which we'll skip ahead to now. And when everything's the same at the beginning of it. This is the leave this morning phantom, go right to play. I've been mistreated down, don't mind down this morning. And right there, he goes into this finger picking thing that's totally different so far. So on this verse, the third and the last verse, he does this finger picking thing instead of that. Right where he did that on the 4 chord. So for that, he bars a 5 from the 5th string down. So you got to have a full bar from the 5th string to the 1st with the index finger. And then since my slide is on the 3rd finger, on my ring finger, I do this with a pinky. So this is, now I'm going to give you the actual fret numbers when we get up into these higher positions. This is 11 with the pinky. So I'll give you the actual fret numbers for this part. So I'm on 8 is where my bar is, 8. So that's my root, so that's the first note. And then my pinky's on 11 on the 1st string. And then here comes the hammer-on, which is a little hard to do while you're wearing the slide. It'll take a little practice, but you're hammering on 10 on the 1st string. So that's an 8 to 10, and then a pull-up. 8, 10, 8. And he's picking some of those other strings in there. Index is on the 2nd string with your bar note in there. Hear that? So it comes up to this is right where the 4 chord is in measure 5 of the form on the 3rd verse. So again, that's the 8 with the root, 11, and then that's 8 on the 2nd string. Just try to get the feel of that hammer on. It's a little tricky, this part. This is what it should sound like. So that's 10. And then I'll just say right off the bat, if this part just feels like you cannot tackle this part, by all means, you could just play that 3rd and 5th verse like you did the 1st verse each time and still be able to play the song and have it sound good. But if you want to get this Robert lick, this is a tricky little finger picking thing that he does. So he mixes in this finger picking. There's no slide involved in this at all. It's 8. And then after you do the hammer on, and then there's a, on the first string, 11, 10, 8. 11, 10, 8. With again getting the second string picking in there as well. So let's hear that with the metronome in time here. That's 60. One. And then this little 3-0. 3-0. That's a 3 on the 6th string with the slide and an open 5th string. So in this tuning, in this G tuning, or in this case closer to A flat tuning, the 5th string is where our root is, right? That's our root, and this is the 5 in this key. So this is our root. That's what I'm putting in between these finger picking things. 3-0. So that's 3-0. So that's what it sounds like in tempo. That's what it's like in half speed. This thing again, and it does the same lick exactly, but now it's on the 5 chord. So now it's on 10. The same. Now you're going to bar 10, and then the same thing here again. And then the same thing that we did before at the end of each verse. So that's the different part that he does, that finger picking thing. So from the 5 chord, and then you're into the next verse, which he does the same as the first 2 verses. And then he does that finger picking thing again on the last verse. So let's try from the last verse. Would be she got hair kept moving from her head down to her toes, breaking on a dollar most where she goes. From her head down to toe. 5, breaking on a dollar most anywhere she goes. And then outro. So that outro, similar to the intro, but a little different. Start with that triplet slide up to 15. So up to speed, something like that. This time I'm going triplet, dun, 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 right to the 3rd string, 15. Triplet, dun, dun, dun. First 2 strings again, sliding up to 15. And then our root there on the 3rd string, 15 with the thumb. And then kind of a percussive slide back from that same note. Whoops, I missed it there. And then that's 3-0, 3 on the 3rd string. Open on the 1st string. And then sliding up to our root ending on the first string on 5. Pick that along with the root on the 5th string. And try to get a nice light first string note, which I kind of missed when I played the whole song there. Mine was a little buzzy, but if you can get a nice clear one there on the first string, if your action's a little higher, again, that will help. So that last lick in tempo, just that outro lick at 60. Great lick in its own right. Yeah. So there you have really all the ingredients that he uses in Walkin Blues. All right, so the first 2 verses he really plays identical. And then that third verse is where you mix in the finger picking on the 4 and the 5 chord, which will take some work. And then the fourth, there's a slight variation in one of the verses where instead of just playing the and one, he just goes straight 1, 1. But you'll hear that it's easy, an easy little detail there. But otherwise, that's all the ingredients he uses in this one. So it's a really great way to get into his style. Again, I would suggest getting into this tuning here and playing along, and then you can, once you get the basic different parts here with me, the goal then is that you can play along with Robert on the recording and really try to match his phrasing and his timing as best you can. So it's not that you always have to play this song exactly like Robert did, but we can certainly learn a tremendous amount of this style by really trying to absorbing as many of the details just like he did from the recording. And then the goal is to gradually speed it up, of course. That was about 60 beats per minute. His is about 95, so once you can play the whole thing solidly at that tempo, bump it up about 5 clicks, 65, 70, until you can gradually get it up close to 95. But it sounds great at that slower tempo as well. You don't have to play it at his tempo. All right, so if you want to get into further detail with this one, get in touch for Zoom lessons. I'm available, so get in touch with me in the comments below, or get in touch with me at my website, which you can also find in the description there, the link to the website. Also love to hear from you about your comments for anything you got out of this video or anything you'd like to add. If you did get something out of this video, please do hit the subscribe, and there'll be lots more of these blues videos coming forward. So I hope you enjoyed and enjoy playing Walkin Blues, and I'll see you next time.